My name is Leela Prescott, and I am 29 years old, living in the charming yet small town of Eaglewood, nestled in the heart of Riverbend. I have always taken pride in my work as a moderator for a popular online story-sharing community that has become my second home. Here, creativity flourishes as people from all walks of life come together to share their thoughts, their passions, and most importantly, their stories. Among the vivid characters and adventurous narratives in our forum, I have found camaraderie with fellow moderators who share my dedication and love for unfiltered human expression. However, my idealistic world began to turn upside down when I received a shocking message that would change everything. It all started one rainy evening as I settled in with my favorite blanket and a cup of chamomile tea, ready to dive into a sea of captivating tales. As I logged into the moderator panel, a notification popped up. It was Modmail from one of our users expressing concern over a surge of stories that did not seem genuine. An underlying feeling of unease crept into my mind when I realized that the user had a point. Many submissions had started to lack the authenticity our community treasured. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and I felt an unsettling mix of anger and betrayal. My fellow moderators and I prided ourselves on maintaining a haven for real human stories, yet the quality appeared to be deteriorating. As we conversed, a bitter sentiment rippled through the chat. It seemed more and more narratives were being ghostwritten by artificial intelligence, a fact that threatened the essence of our forum. Plagiarism didn't just seem like a minor annoyance, it felt as if the heart had been ripped from our community. I proposed we implement a rule to combat this wave of disingenuous submissions, driven by my passionate belief that true stories reflect the human experience. The other moderators agreed, forming a united front against the AI slop that threatened to consume our once vibrant community. We decided to announce the new rule. Users must report any stories suspected of being generated by artificial intelligence. What seemed like a noble decision, however, soon spiraled into chaos. The backlash was swift and brutal. Users who had formerly embraced our community felt betrayed. Stories that were mildly criticized and flagged began to pile up, creating an overwhelming wave of reports. The tension mounted, and I felt like I was drowning in an avalanche of negativity. Our once supportive base turned hostile overnight. Voices that had once sung the praises of our platform were now echoing with accusations of censorship. I found myself at the center of a storm, accused of stifling creativity and punishing genuine authors due to a misguided sense of protection. My heart sank as I read the derogatory remarks. In a desperate attempt to retake control, I organized a live session to discuss the new rule, hoping to bring the community together for an open dialogue. I felt like David against Goliath, but I clung to the idea that demanding authenticity would ultimately win out. Yet rather than coming together, voices filled with anger erupted, crying out against my stance. During the session, a user named Greg, better known in the forum as the Creative Mind, openly mocked my ideals. Greg had been a regular contributor, known for his cheeky and often unpredictable writing. Initially, I respected him, but in that moment his facade dropped. "You want authenticity?" he scoffed, leaning into his camera. "Look at yourself, Leela. Are you really such a champion of creativity or just desperate to maintain relevance? You are just as artificial as the stories you ban. Spare me." His remark echoed in my mind, twisting with thoughts of self-doubt. Did I really care about the community, or was I just trying to hide behind a false sense of superiority? But the damage didn't end there. Although I fought to maintain my ground, Greg's words ignited something deeper. A wave of betrayal swept through my heart, and I vowed at that moment to reclaim our community. I began scouring the forum, going through user profiles, and tracking down everything that was amiss. But instead of finding success in my search, I only uncovered more and more despair. Creativity evaporated from the stories, revealing a smokescreen behind thinly veiled interactions. I stumbled upon dozens of flagged stories, many haphazardly thrown together, devoid of emotion and passion. Frustration rumbled in my chest as it dawned on me that my efforts to preserve our community were merely making things worse. As potential allies turned into foes, I realized I had failed to anticipate the resistance I would face. Days turned into weeks, and just when I thought it could not get worse, it did. One frazzled morning, I opened my email only to find a banner from the admin with an announcement. Due to ongoing complaints and reports, our moderator powers were being scrutinized. I had tried to act as a guardian for creativity, and instead I found myself on trial, my integrity questioned. The once vibrant messages of support faded into a chorus of dissent. I felt utterly isolated, as if I stood alone on the edge of a precipice shrouded in storm clouds. But no one wanted to hear my voice. They only demanded transparency about my intentions. Preceding the chaos, I had justified my pride in upholding the community. I thought it would propel us back to our roots. However, I now understood that my efforts to combat AI-generated stories plunged me into both isolation and despair. It became clear to me that I had failed the most fundamental principle: understanding my fellow members. Filled with frustration that blurred the edges of my perceptions, I decided it was time to face the tempest head-on. With a newfound determination to reclaim my place in the community, I resolutely began drawing a bold plan. I would expose Greg, the creative mind, and anyone else who failed to respect the spirit of storytelling. After all, it was those writers who had played a part in dragging our community down into this pit of mediocrity. I needed a way to turn the tables, to catch them red-handed, and to finally unveil the nearly fraudulent nature of their stories. Researching the methods by which users could generate stories through artificial intelligence, I painstakingly crafted an idea to counter their plagiarism with their own game. I created phantom profiles under pseudonyms, carefully seeding the community with stories that were blatantly generated by AI, leading to absurd plotlines and plastic characters. The aim was simple. If I could make them take notice, perhaps it would spark outrage against their own hypocrisy. It was the perfect plan, or so I thought. The day I released my stories under these false identities was like unleashing a phantom presence into the ether of our community. I watched as messages poured in, excitement gripping their souls as they dissected my tales, ignorant of the fact that the words were not mine at all. What genius! A twist unlike any other! Flowing praise poured in, while in the shadows, I felt both a rush of rebellion and guilt. The real twist came just as I had hoped. Greg, caught up in the anticipation, anticipated the fresh stories too. He took the bait, campaigning on his own media platform to deride the artificial twist and urge impassioned debates. "The problem is so blatant," he rallied. "And yet, we sit here unable to confront the specters haunting our forum." It became an unforeseen confrontation. The mark I had aimed to stake against him began to take shape. But one fateful evening, while scrolling through notifications, I discovered unintended consequences. A fellow moderator had stepped in, investigating the new round of flagged stories, and promptly challenged my hasty rebellion. "Leela, you need to explain yourself. These posts have flagged hundreds of user complaints." The flood of panic rushed through me, burning like wildfire. I had crossed lines in a desperate attempt to reclaim our community, and now everything teetered on the edge of collapse. Despair filled me, but strangely enough, it also sparked an ember of clarity. I sat in the dim light of my living room as I wrestled with the reality I had created. Rather than drowning further in deception, I was determined to take ownership of my actions. It wasn't the AI-generated stories that had failed, but my own attempt to circumvent the spirit of creativity that mattered. I breathed deeply and prepared to compose a confession to the community, laying bare my attempts with an honesty that matched my initial passion. The next forum meeting was set, not to dissolve our resolve, but to reclaim it together. As I read my confession to the multitude of combined voices, I anticipated a chorus of harsh judgments. But I stood there, raw and vulnerable, sharing my intentions, my frustrations, and acknowledging how I had lost sight of fostering genuine interactions by trying to dismantle those who dissent. The silence was palpable, hanging in the air like an electric charge. Greg was among the crowd, but instead of laughter or derision, I noticed his expression shift. As I finished speaking, his voice broke through the silence. "We may have been in the wrong too," he uttered quietly. "We let our passions get the better of us and forgot that sharing stories was meant to unify us." I could almost feel the shift in the room, bodies beginning to connect in shared frustration. Others soon echoed Greg's sentiment, openly admitting their part in the chaos that had ensued. This was a bizarre revelation. The very community I sought to protect had transformed into a haven of collaboration, reclaiming the art of storytelling like fire rekindling into a raging blaze. As discussions unfolded, we found common ground that had been buried beneath the layers of anger and frustration. Stories flowed, discussions flourished, and our community rebuilt itself on authenticity. As the weeks turned into months, I realized the power of vulnerability and authenticity. Our forum thrived like never before. The trauma of betrayal melted into understanding. The voices that echoed once of bitterness became melodies of kinship. Creators who had shunned each other came together to unite. Acknowledging the fierce responsibility we all held to fend off the cold specter of automation. I learned that I did not need to destroy to fight for what I truly believed in, preserving the essence of unique voices among the din. In the end, my heart swelled with pride as I watched our community turn away from chaos, rising from the ashes of discontent to cultivate new stories filled with rich emotion, vulnerability, and creativity. With each page turned, I found fulfillment. And although Greg still often joked about AI slop, I learned to laugh along with him. We were warriors for authenticity, and more importantly, we became allies in celebration of our shortcomings and triumphs. My journey through betrayal had transformed not only the community but also myself. In sharing our flaws, we birthed a renewed depth in storytelling, binding us in an unbreakable tapestry woven with the ephemeral threads of human experience.